Imagine, just for a second, that the unexpected actually happens. You're suddenly stranded. No cell service, no map, zero hope of immediate rescue. Your very first instinct? Probably to panic, right? Or maybe you're desperately wishing you packed a better knife or one of those fancy fire starters. But listen to this. According to the official U.S. Army Survival Manual, your absolute most valuable asset in a life-or-death emergency? It isn't sitting in your backpack. It's in your head. It is your attitude. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to dive right in and learn how to master the elements by unlocking the secrets of the military's guide to extreme survival.
So here is our briefing agenda as we unpack this guide. First up, the psychology of survival. Second, the military's SURVIVAL acronym. Third, tactical first aid for preserving the human body. And finally, surviving the desert extremes. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The Psychology of Survival.
Okay, before we can even think about conquering the wild, we have to conquer our own minds. The Army Survival Manual makes this incredibly clear. Take a look at this quote straight from the source. Having survival skills is important. Having the will to survive is essential. I really want that to sink in for a moment. You could literally memorize every single knot, every friction fire technique, and every edible plant on the planet. But if you lack that raw mental drive to live, all of that acquired knowledge just goes to waste.
Okay, let's dive into this. Because it turns out, before you can master your mind, you really need to recognize what happens when it is put under extreme stress. These are the common signs of distress you've got to watch out for, both in yourself and in others. We're talking about difficulty making decisions, unexpected angry outbursts, sudden forgetfulness, low energy levels, and just withdrawing from the group altogether. Now, in a survival situation, fear is completely natural. It's a given. The real key here is normalizing that fear and spotting these physical and mental symptoms early on, so they don't mutate into full-blown, debilitating panic.
Section 2. The SURVIVAL acronym.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the military structures really complex situational awareness into a highly memorable, step-by-step checklist. Size up the situation, use all your senses, remember where you are, vanquish fear, improvise, value living, act like the natives, and live by your wits. It is perfectly designed to keep your brain engaged and actually prevent you from making a fatal, hasty decision. Let's pull out and highlight two of the absolutely critical letters from this acronym.
First up, the letter V. Vanquish fear and panic. As we touched on just a minute ago, uncontrolled fear is absolutely your greatest enemy. When panic takes over, it just destroys your ability to make intelligent decisions. It rapidly drains your physical energy, and it makes you react to your imagination rather than the actual reality of your situation. So vanquishing panic is step 1 to taking control of your fate. You have to breathe, assess the situation, and act on facts.
Next is the letter I. Improvise. Now, in our modern world, our biggest panic is usually a dead phone battery or losing Wi-Fi, right? We live in this very easy-come, easy-go culture. If something breaks, we just hop online and order a new one. But in a survival scenario, you have to completely overcome that conditioning. Standard survival kits are inevitably going to run out or break. You need to learn how to look at ordinary, natural objects and see multiple uses. I mean, think about using a rock for a hammer or a piece of clothing for a water filter. Your imagination absolutely must take over when your gear fails.
Section 3. Preserving the human body.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how we shift from the psychological straight into the biological. Just look at these numbers tracking the truly terrifying progression of dehydration. At just a 5% loss of body fluid, you're experiencing thirst, irritability, nausea, and weakness. Hit 10% and you are dizzy, unable to walk, and dealing with tingling limbs. At 15%, you suffer dim vision, painful urination, a swollen tongue, and even deafness. But here's the most critical takeaway for you. By the time you actually feel a craving for fluids, you are already 2% dehydrated. So you absolutely cannot rely on thirst as an indicator of how much water you actually need.
Beyond just hydration, you absolutely must know how to handle acute medical emergencies. If you find yourself dealing with an unconscious person, airway management is the absolute first priority of tactical first aid. A blocked airway kills faster than almost anything else out there. And this brings us to the jaw thrust method, which is an essential manual technique to open a blocked airway safely. Let's walk through these rapid-fire steps so you know exactly how to perform this potentially life-saving maneuver. Step 1. Grasp the angles of the victim's lower jaw. Step 2. Lift with both hands, moving that jaw forward. And step 3. If their lips are closed, just gently open the lower lip with your thumb.
This simple, mechanical action actually lifts the tongue right away from the back of the throat and keeps the airway open so they can breathe, even while they're completely unconscious.
Another critical emergency is severe arterial bleeding, and honestly, that can easily be fatal in a matter of minutes. Your very first line of defense here is a direct pressure dressing applied firmly right over the wound, just like you see in the first diagram. But if that fails and the bleeding continues, you need to go to the extreme last resort measure, the tourniquet. Now, a tourniquet should be placed between the wound and the heart, about 5 to 10 centimeters above the wound site, never directly over it, okay? And tightened just enough to stop that blood flow entirely.
Section 4. Surviving the desert extremes. So the crucial point here is understanding the incredibly dangerous gap between Hollywood myth and military reality, especially when applying all of these bodily preservation rules to one of the most unforgiving environments on Earth. You know how movies always show survivors taking these tiny, dramatic sips from a canteen to make their water last for days? Well, the U.S. Marine Corps doctrine says the exact opposite. Never ration your water. You need to drink the water you have as you need it to stay clear-headed and functional. So instead of rationing your water, you must conserve your sweat. You do this by resting in the deep shade during the heat of the day, limiting your physical activity, and basically using your head, not your sweat. And that leads us directly into rule number 1 of the U.S. Marine Corps' 10 Commandments of Desert Survival. It is incredibly simple, but it literally saves lives. Stay where you are and stay calm. If you happen to have a vehicle, remain with it. You should only ever relocate if you are absolutely certain you can reach safety or a known water source. Wandering aimlessly out there, it's basically a death sentence.
The rest of the USMC rules might seem highly counterintuitive, but they are absolutely vital. Move only when absolutely necessary, and only do it at night when it's cooler. Make a fuss, use mirrors, build fires, or wave bright clothes to signal rescuers. Keep your mouth closed to breathe, which minimizes evaporative water loss. But perhaps the most surprising rule of all, do not eat anything if you are without water. Digesting food actually demands water from your system. So if you eat a snack while you're stranded in the desert without fluids, you are rapidly accelerating deadly dehydration. Crazy, right?
So this brings us to a final thought. We have covered a lot of really intense ground today in this explainer, from the survival checklist to the terrifying reality of dehydration, stopping arterial bleeding, and those wild counterintuitive rules of the desert. But I want to leave you with this. If the unexpected happens tomorrow, whether it's a natural disaster, a roadside breakdown in the middle of nowhere, or just getting lost on a hike, will your mind be your greatest weapon or your worst enemy? The psychology of overcoming panic, improvising, and preserving your resources applies to literally any sudden life emergency. It really is incredible just how resilient the human mind can be when it's properly focused. Thanks so much for joining me today, and remember, true survival always starts right there, in the mind.